Hey everyone, today we're going to go behind the gates of Cape Canaveral Space Force Station for a rare look at space history. Join us as we stand on historic launch pads, explore missile and rocket museums, and climb inside the Cape Canaveral Lighthouse. This is definitely one of the most fascinating tours on Florida's Space Coast. We booked our tour through the Canaveral Tours, which offers a few different tour options. There's a 2-hour excursion that visits the Lighthouse and Hangar C, a 3-hour tour that adds the Space Force Museum at Launch Complex 26, and finally the premier 4-hour tour that is a fully guided experience with additional stops at historic launch sites. We ended up choosing the full 4-hour experience so that we could see absolutely everything. At the time of our visit, prices for this tour were $68.50 per adult and $60 per minor. And it's important to note that because this tour takes place on an active Space Force base, it's only open to U.S. citizens. Foreign visitors and visa holders will not be eligible for space station clearance. Once you book online, you'll receive an email with a link to fill out mandatory security information before your tour. For adults, this includes your name, birth date, driver's license number, and social security number. Minors only need to provide their name and birth date. The tour begins at the Sands Space History Center, just outside the security gate of the base. You can't miss it with its giant Navaho missile on display as you enter the parking lot. After check-in, you'll meet your guide and board a comfortable air-conditioned bus. You'll also be given a receiver and earpiece, which makes it easy to hear the guide as you explore the historic launch sites that made Cape Canaveral the birthplace of America's space program. After passing through the security gates, our first stop was Launch Complexes 9 and 10. These twin launch pads were originally built in the 1950s for the Navaho missile program. The Navaho was a supersonic intercontinental range cruise missile that served as an early step toward developing America's long-range missile and rocket technology. What makes this site especially interesting are the 2 beehive blockhouses. These thick, dome-shaped structures allowed crews to safely monitor launches from close range. The blockhouses were equipped with periscopes extending through the roof so engineers could observe the launches directly while still being protected by the reinforced concrete walls.
Now, what was launched from 31 and 32? Well, believe it or not, they did have a flat launch pad, but there was actually 2 silos out there, 85-foot deep silos. This is where we tested the Minuteman missiles were tested out here. Those silos became vacant after 1969 until after 1986. Does anyone know what happened space-wise? 1986. Challenger, absolutely. Great. A+. All right. The Challenger disaster. So after they went through all, recovered as many pieces as they could from the ocean and did their investigations, they needed a place to store it. Someone had the great idea. We have these silos here sitting vacant. We can go ahead and make it climate controlled and store Challenger. So the remains of Challenger are about 150 yards behind these blockhouses sitting in the silos.
We spent around 10 minutes here walking around the site and taking in history before moving on to our next stop. Our next stop was the Cape Canaveral Lighthouse. Standing at 151 feet tall, it's been guiding ships along Florida's space coast for over 155 years. This is actually the 3rd lighthouse built here. The very first was only 65 feet tall, which proved far too short to be effective. A second, taller lighthouse followed, but it was built too close to the shore. So by 1894, coastal erosion made that structure unsafe. So the lighthouse was carefully moved inland to the location where it still stands today. As part of the tour, we were able to explore up to the 5th floor of the lighthouse, with a guide stationed inside to walk us through the different rooms along the way. Climb this lighthouse. On the 2nd level, one side held a master bedroom while the other side was arranged as a kitchen and a dining space.
Mr. McKnight scratched his name there in the glass. I mean, Nelson's scratched his name there. Somebody did that too. We don't know who that is. But yeah, early graffiti. And when you get up to the third floor, as you go through this door here, notice these doors to the hallway or to the stairwell. They're curved. You'll never see a curved door in Home Depot. Up to the fifth floor. And you do 5, 4, and 2. Okay. All the way up.
Climbing higher, we reach the 5th floor. Here you can see seams in the brickwork that reveal how the lighthouse was constructed, with large sections stacking and mortared together like building blocks. Unfortunately, guests aren't able to go higher than this due to safety reasons, but it still gives you a close look at the craftsmanship. On the way down, we stopped on the 4th floor, where there are a couple of additional rooms that would have served as bedrooms.
This building would have been very high-tech back in the day.
Oh yeah.
So this would have been, in fact, even iron, this was one of the first cast iron structures that was made to this height. If you would have been through here in like 1900, and you would have been like in awe of how modern this building was. They were, you know, it's kind of funny to think about it. It's nothing now, but at the time they were stretching the boundaries of what we knew about building with iron and building with IUs and stuff like that.
Finally, on the 3rd floor, you can see a panoramic photo display that shows what the view would look like from the very top of the lighthouse. This level also has a brick chimney for a heating stove, along with an old radio direction finder, which would have received radio beacon signals from the lighthouse to guide ships safely along the coast. Before leaving the lighthouse itself, the tour provides each guest with a voucher for a free bottle of water, which you can redeem on the 1st floor. After grabbing ours, we made our way over to the Lighthouse Museum. So we're heading into the museum now. Yeah, so Hangar C looks like that's right over there. So we'll go there next. Cool.
To the Keeper's Cottage Museum. When you come in, the timeline's going to be to the left.
Inside, the museum shares the full history of Cape Canaveral's lighthouses. There's a display about the original 65-foot brick lighthouse, along with an actual section of brick and mortar salvaged from its walls. Another exhibit explains the construction of the stronger iron lighthouse that replaced it, designed to withstand the harsh coastal conditions. You'll also find cases showing the different lamps that were used over the years, especially after the lighthouse was electrified. Attached to the museum is a gift shop with a wide range of souvenirs. We made sure to pick up our usual magnet and ornament for our travel tree, but we also stumbled upon something new, a Lighthouse Passport. It works just like the National Parks Passport, but instead of parks, you can collect stamps from lighthouses all across the country. Now, we'll definitely have to go back and revisit a few to start building up our collection.
All right, you ready?
Yes.
All right.
First official stamp.
I take it you wanted the first spot there, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, here we go. Oh, that's not bad. Not bad.
Beautiful.
Don't close it right away. Let it dry. Okay.
Okay. All right. Look at that. That looks awesome. If you already have one of these passports, you'll definitely want to collect your stamp here since it's one of the rarer ones. The only way to get it is by taking this tour onto the Space Force base.
Here we got a lighthouse.
Okay, well, now I have a Lighthouse Passport book that we're going to have to start collecting lighthouse stamps. So we're heading over to Hangar C now. I'm excited about this hangar. From the Lighthouse Museum, it's a short walk to Hangar C, the Cape's oldest missile assembly hangar, built in 1953. Today, it serves as an indoor gallery for roughly 30 restored rockets, missiles, and pieces of support hardware. Much of it originally displayed outdoors at LC-26's Rocket Garden. Into the hangar we go. One of the first things that you'll notice when you walk in is the Thor-Able, a Thor ballistic missile with an Able upper stage on top. This rocket design served as the bridge between missile testing and America's very first satellite and space probe launches in the late 1950s. You'll also see an Atlas missile on display, America's first operational intercontinental ballistic missile. The Atlas went on to play a major role in the space program as well, launching the Mercury astronauts into orbit in the early 1960s. Insane. Another highlight is the SM-62 Snark, a long-range intercontinental air-breathing cruise missile from the 1950s. A unique piece on display is the spring-like telemetry antenna. Despite its simple coil-shaped design, it's played a critical role by communicating with missiles in flight, transmitting performance data back to the ground in real time. Toward the back of the hangar, you'll find the Gemini 5 Titan II flown booster segment, a 23-foot section of the first stage that launched astronauts Gordon Cooper and Pete Conrad in 1965, recovered from the Atlantic after the mission and brought here in 2023. Surrounding these highlights are additional large artifacts, including the Redstone, Thor, Beaumark, Polaris, and Pershing II hardware.
It was just so cool to me that I'm like walking so close to all of these rockets and breathing right now. It's amazing.
And if you look up, you'll even spot Marvin the Martian keeping watch from the window above the exhibit. We spent about an hour and a half total in the Lighthouse, Lighthouse Museum, and Hangar C before continuing on to our next stop. Our next stop brought us to LC5 and LC6, two adjacent launch sites that share much of the same history and infrastructure. The biggest highlight here is that Alan Shepard launched from LC5 in 1961, becoming the first American in space on the Mercury Redstone 3 mission, Freedom 7. Today, there's a fiberglass replica of the Mercury capsule sitting on the pad, giving you a sense of what it looked like back during the Mercury era. On either side of the pad, you'll notice the water deluge nozzles, which are huge jets that could flood the pad to keep it cool or quickly put out any fires during a launch. LC5 is also where Ham the chimpanzee launched on January 31st, 1961, aboard the Mercury Redstone 2. His suborbital flight was a crucial test of life support, spacecraft systems, and biological responses before America risked sending humans. And it's a cool feeling to stand here knowing that you're literally standing on the ground where America's first astronauts and primates took their first missions into space. Our next stop was Launch Complex 26, which played a huge role in the early space program. Built in the late 1950s, this site is most famous as the place where the United States launched its very first satellite, Explorer 1, on January 31st, 1958. We started our visit inside LC-26 Blockhouse, the control center that managed launches from both pads here. Right next to the entrance, you'll even spot an I Dream of Jeannie display, a fun reminder of how pop culture has always been tied to the Cape. There's also a Monkeynauts and Astro Chimps exhibit honoring the primates who flew before astronauts. This section also includes a Project Mercury primate flight couch, an actual style of seat where chimpanzees like Ham would have been strapped in and trained for their flights. From there, we stepped into the firing rooms. I even had a chance to press the original launch switches on one of the preserved control panels. In another room, you'll find one of the Cape's early digital computers, a huge system that takes up an entire wall. Next, we walked over to the exhibit hall, just a few steps away from the blockhouse. Inside is a restored V2 rocket engine, technology captured from Germany after World War II that directly shaped America's early missile and rocket programs. There's also a really interesting exhibit that explains why Florida's Atlantic coast was picked as the perfect spot for rocket launches. The open ocean provides a safe downrange area, and the weather here is fairly reliable. And being so close to the equator gives rockets an extra boost into orbit. Right next to it is a scale model of a submarine carrying Polaris missiles, which highlights the early days of sea-based missile systems. In the next room, we came across detailed models of ballistic missiles and space launch vehicles, plus an actual Gemini 2 capsule on display. Seeing it up close really makes you realize just how cramped these early spacecraft were for the astronauts who had to fly in them. From there, we stepped outside into the rocket garden. The first thing that catches your eye is the massive Delta IV Common Booster Core, and you don't appreciate just how big this is until you're standing right next to it. Nearby is a spherical monitor station GPS antenna, which was once part of the Cape's tracking network. You can also find the Gemini White Room, which is a clean, enclosed platform where astronauts suited up and boarded their spacecraft before launch. Another highlight is the Titan locomotive. This is a rail engine that hauled Titan rockets from the assembly building out to the pad. Among the missile hardware is a sub-rock missile designed to be launched underwater from a submarine. And finally, there is an amphibious recovery vehicle, which would have been used to rescue astronauts if they've ever had to make an emergency landing in the swamps around the Cape.
It's crazy to think that rockets used to launch just right here, and we're standing on it. Standing on a piece of history. It's pretty amazing.
We spent a little over an hour total here between the blockhouse, exhibit hall, and a rocket garden before wrapping up the tour and heading back. The tour wrapped up at the Sand Space History Center, which sits just outside the gates of the Space Force Station. The best part is that this museum is completely free to visit, and you don't need to book a tour to come here. Inside, there are even more artifacts on display, along with wall panels that guide you through the entire history of the Cape. Each one highlights a different launch complex, starting with LC-1 and going all the way to LC-47. They're filled with fun details about what rockets launch from each site, and in many cases, which astronauts started their journeys from these very spots. It's a great way to tie everything together after seeing the sights in person. And of course, before you leave, there's a gift shop where you can grab a few last souvenirs. We had such a great time on this tour, and getting to see all the history up close and standing in the exact spots where America's first astronauts took flight was unforgettable. And if you're a space enthusiast, this is absolutely a must-do experience. It's also a great way to see and tour the Cape Canaveral Lighthouse, so if that's on your list, you'll need to book this tour. Just keep in mind that since it's on an active Space Force base, the tour is only open to US citizens. If you found any of this information helpful, I would love it if you would hit that like button and subscribe if you would love to discover more incredible things to do in Florida and beyond. I create a new video every week, and the best way to be able to see them is by subscribing. Also, I want to give a huge shout out to my channel members. You guys help keep this channel going, and we couldn't be more thankful. If you would like to support what we do here and get exclusive emotes, early access to our videos, and more, click the link in the video description for more details. If you have even more time to spare on the Space Coast, then definitely check out my guide on Kennedy Space Center. You can learn more about it in the video that just popped up on the screen. Until next time.